Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Was the Sun Hero. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Time's up. President Mick announced loudly as Team Toga once again descended to the ground. Winner. Toga raised both hands into the air with double victory signs. They hadn't even been touched the whole match. The combination of Ichako's zero gravity, Mei's jetpack and hover souls, and Izuku's pyrokinesis had seen them safely in the air for most of the 15-minute match. That's the end of the cavalry battle, Mick declared as the crowd cheered loudly. Everyone had enjoyed the dynamic and surprising second round of the sports festival. Now we'll take a look at the top 4 teams right away. These will be the teams whose members will participate in the third round. The giant screens around the stadium lit up, displaying the rankings of the various teams. In the first place, with over 10 million points, managing to keep the highest valued headband for the entire time, we have Team Toga. Make some noise for the team that got through the entire round, even with the biggest target on their back. The crowd roared, many of them impressed that the team had not only managed to keep the 10 million headband, but also at the ingenuity and strategy they displayed. Their plan had worked flawlessly and kept them well out of harm's way for most of the match. The only time they'd been cornered, they'd simply flown out of the trap without issue. The team had made great use of all their available skills and resources, and it showed. Woo. I knew we'd make it. Hugs. Toga laughed as she was let down when their horse came apart. She hugged Izuku first, reveling in her boyfriend's warmth as he returned the hug. Then she pulled both Ichako and Mei into a group hug. Success is great. Mei had a manic smile. But I need to check on my baby. With a quick spin of Toga's body, the jetpack was pulled off of her. Mei happily started inspecting the device with a smile. Toga blinked at how fast and easily the pink had managed to get the gear off of her. I'm glad our plan worked. Ichako was beaming at her teammates in joy. You three were awesome. Izuku praised with a wide smile. We couldn't have done it without you three. Yes. My babies were on full display to the entire world, Mei declared as she switched to inspecting her hover souls. Her calculated risk of teaming up with the first place student had paid off wonderfully. The 10 million headband had been the target of everyone, and their team had been on screen throughout the match because of it. She could practically feel the interest of the investors and support gear companies. I was a little worried when Todoroki surrounded us in that big box of ice, Ichako admitted with a sigh as they all relaxed while looking at the displays to see the other 3 teams that had passed. In second place, Team Mineta, Mick announced as the name appeared on the screen. They ignored the 10 million headband entirely, and focused on collecting the headbands of as many other teams as possible instead. Aizawa pointed out the second place team's strategy. It was a logical and well-reasoned response to all of the focus being on Team Toga. Team Mineta all looked pleased by their success. Aoyama was posing for the multitudes of media cameras that were flashing, wanting pictures of the second place team. Tokoyami merely had his arms crossed and his eyes closed as he enjoyed their success. Mineta was hopping up and down while cheering excitedly at moving on to the third round. Almost there, Shinso exhaled as he gave a neutral look to the crowd and all of the cameras. Just one more round. In third place, Team Bakugo, Mick declared, and the team appeared on the giant screen below Team Mineta. Ah, well, I guess third place isn't too bad. All's well that ends well, and all of that. Mina shrugged while glad that her team had advanced to the third round of the festival. Yeah, you're right, no reason to complain. Sero agreed with a nod as he rolled his right shoulder. Carrying Bakugo around while running all over the place trying to catch Team Toga hadn't been easy. Maybe, but do you two think that's how he feels? Kirishima whispered to the other two, while pointing at the nearly growling Bakugo. Damn it, damn it, damn it, Bakugo raged under his breath at losing out to Izuku's team, and that purple pervert's team too. Small crackles of his quirk were sparking off his palms in his frustration. In fourth place, we have Team Todoroki. Mick revealed the final team to make it to the third round. I'm so sorry, everyone. I should have used my trump card when we had Team Toga surrounded. Iida apologized to his teammates with a deep bow. Don't be so hard on yourself, Iida. Momo shook her head at the blue-haired boy. We didn't expect them to be able to pull off that maneuver more than once. Truly the intelligent Ravenet was still a little stunned that not only had Team Toga been able to use their flight Turk more than once, but that they'd been able to maintain it for the majority of the match. It had quite effectively removed them from contention. Yeah, don't sweat it. Kaminari reassured the uptight teen. We made it in without losing our headband. So it's all good, right? There you have it. Midnight called out to everyone in the stadium. These are the 16 students that will advance to the final round. With the crack of her whip the screens changed to a list of the competitors. Third round, Midoriya Izuku, Toga Himiko, Yoraka Chako, Hatsume Mei, Mineta Minor, Tokoyami Fumikage, Aoyama Yuga, Shinso Hitachi, Bakugo Katsuki, Kirishima Jiro, Ashido Mina, Sero Hanto, Todoroki Shoto, Yayorozu Momo, Iida Tenya, Kaminari Denki. Third round. Now, I am sure everyone could use a break. With that being said, we'll be pausing the festival for a 2-hour lunch break. When we come back, it'll be straight into the third round. See you all in a bit. Hit the restrooms, grab some food, buy some merch, all proceeds go to the school. Mick informed the public as the crowd began to stand up from their seats to take advantage of the break. Don't pressure them to buy things. Aizawa was heard over the speakers. I'm not pressuring, it's a suggestion. Mick chuckled at his co-host. Whatever, Aizawa replied dully just before the speakers clicked off. Hey, let's go grab some food, Shota. Mick grinned at the thought of food. Go get it yourself, Hisashi. I'm taking a nap. Aizawa replied as he climbed into his sleeping bag and turned to face the wall. What? Come on, how many naps do you need? Mick questioned his friend while nudging him with his boot. Lunch break. Toga smiled as she fed Izuku a piece of grilled fish. The Verdette team happily ate the morsel as he continued to write down the various quirks he'd seen today in his notebook. I wonder if they'll explain their quirks a bit more if I ask them. Izuku wondered aloud as he finished writing down the quirk of another 1B student, this one being the girl with the vine-like hair. He was incredibly curious about Class 1B's quirks. Maybe if you ask them politely. Toga giggled as she took a bite of food herself, with the same chopsticks. Indirect kiss. You two are so adorable you might give us all diabetes. Toru gushed at the couple. Right? Mina giggled as well. Sugary sweet. Toga playfully stuck out her tongue at her friends, while Izuku chuckled sheepishly. I heard they're having some recreational events before the third round for everyone that wants to participate. Jiro informed everyone between bites of her lunch. I wonder what they are. Achako looked curious about the just for fun events. They couldn't be anything too crazy. Tsuyu considered with her index finger on her chin as she thought. It's only supposed to be a breather before the third round after all. I'm sure a teacher will tell us if any of them are important or required. Momo reasoned as she sipped her drink. As it stands, they sound entirely optional. Unknown to the girls, 2 certain classmates of theirs had overheard their conversation. Both of the boys got bright looks in their eyes before looking at each other with grins. They quickly walked off while planning in hushed whispers. After lunch. We're back, sports festival fans. Now that lunch is over, it's time to reveal this year's final event. But before that happens, there's good news for all of you who did not make it to the third round. Mick announced as the stadium was filled once again by the crowd. This is not just a sports festival for the few. So, we have prepared multiple recreational games where everyone can participate. We've even flown in professional cheerleaders from the States to liven things up. A team of women in orange cheerleading outfits were on the field, pom-poms in hand and waving to the crowd. The cheers rose up loudly for the women, especially from the men in the crowd. After a moment, however, near silence suddenly descended upon the stadium out of nowhere. Ha! Mick blinked up in the announcer's booth. He even raised up his trademark sunglasses to make sure he was seeing correctly. What are those girls doing? Aizawa questioned blankly at what he was seeing. He felt a slight twitch start in his left eye. He knew something was up about this situation. The current center of attention turned out to be the 7 girls from Class 1A, all of them dressed in matching orange cheerleader uniforms like the American professionals. The only difference being the UA on the front of the teens' tops. All 7 of the girls had flat looks as they realized they'd been tricked. Wonder what's going on? What kind of fan service is this? Mick cried out in shock at what the 7 students were wearing. The uniforms were just midriff-bearing tops with no sleeves and loose, flowing miniskirts. The outfit certainly showed quite a bit of skin, and almost every male student in attendance among the first years was enjoying the display, some of them much more discreetly than others. As all of the girls started to turn red from a mixture of embarrassment and anger, Mineta and Kaminari gave each other thumbs up. There was a perverted grin on both of their faces as well. The 2 of them had gone to their female classmates and convinced them that they had to wear the uniforms for a cheer led by the American professionals. They'd even dropped Aizawa's name to make it more convincing, just so they could see the girls wearing the sexy uniforms. Kaminari. Momo yelled at the blonde, both angry and mortified. You tricked us. Mineta. Jiro roared at the short teen. Her jacks were practically lashing the air in her fury. She viciously threw her own pair of pom-poms on the ground, while crossing her arms over her chest. Ugh, why did I let those 2 trick me? Momo sank to her knees and moped. I even used my quirk to make these outfits. Hey, lighten up, yeah Momo. It isn't the end of the world. Achako tried to comfort her friend. Yeah, these uniforms are doing something good, for me at least. Toga giggled as she waved playfully at Izuku. The Verdette waved back with a lopsided smile. Izuku seems to like me in this outfit. If you don't mind, I'd like to keep it. I'll wear it on special occasions for Izuku. The blonde girl covered her red cheeks with her pom-poms at the thought. You can keep it. Momo's whole face was now red for an entirely different reason. She wasn't the only one either, as the other girls were covering their blushing cheeks and just staring at Toga. Well, Toru cleared her throat with a small cough. There's still some time left before the last event begins, and it would be even more embarrassing if things got tense. Let's just do it anyway. Toru exclaimed as she got into the moment and the cheerleader uniform. What? No, Jiro shook her head in refusal. She was already embarrassed. Toru, you really like this, huh? So you questioned the invisible girl curiously. Mineta, Kaminari, Aizawa's bone-chilling voice came from the speakers. Even the crowd flinched at the man's tone. We'll be having a discussion about this prank of yours as soon as the third round is over, do you understand? Both teens immediately locked up and nodded, the cameras connected to the large screens focusing on the two boys, letting everyone see their response. Oh man, we're screwed. Kaminari looked blue in the face at what Aizawa was going to do to them. It was just a prank, no one got hurt, Mineta mumbled, but it was clear the short teen was trying to convince himself more than anything. Sweat poured down his face in miniature rivers as he imagined their future punishment, while the students that wanted to play the recreational games did so. The professional cheerleaders hyped up the crowd during the downtime. Cementus was making the ring for the third round during this time. Okay, it's pretty much done now, Cementus remarked as he used his Quirk to create the ring for the upcoming matches. It was a full 30 by 30 square raised about 60 centimeters off the ground. He just had to make sure it was nice and level and he'd be satisfied. He was a bit of a stickler for his creations that weren't used in the line of duty. Thank you for your work, Cementus. Midnight thanked her fellow teacher and pro hero. Cementus gave her a nod as he made himself a seat a bit away from the ring. He had a feeling he'd have to repair it at least a few times for this bunch of students. Hey, everyone. Are you ready to rumble? Mick called out over the speakers. The resounding roar was a clear answer. Everyone was ready for the third round to finally begin. A lot has happened today, but now it has come to this. A serious battle where you can only depend on yourself. Here, you have no teammates or comrades. It's a fan favorite. The classic one-on-one tournament. Heroes have to be able to face what comes at them, whenever it comes at them. Skill, knowledge, experience, perseverance, and sheer determination, use them all to your advantage in this round. Mick kept the excitement building as the crowd was practically rumbling now. Izuku was waiting in the tunnel that led to the newly made ring. He stretched and prepared himself for his match. Being the first match of the third round was unexpected, but he'd deal with it. The small bubbling of nerves instantly vanished as Izuku exhaled and readied himself. He had this, he was going to win this match. Let's get started with the first match. Mick called out to the stadium and the cheers of the crowd. For match number 1, coming out of the right tunnel, we have the fiery powerhouse of Hero Course Class 1A, Midoriya Izuku. Mick introduced as Izuku made his way towards the ring, and walked up the short set of stairs to stand in the ring proper. Nearly all of his classmates were cheering for him from their box. Oh Izuku. Toga yelled so loud that she could actually be heard over the crowd for an instant. Coming in from the left tunnel, it's the high voltage man himself, also from Hero Course Class 1A, Kaminari Denki. Mick introduced Izuku's opponent. Kaminari walked into the ring with a grin and stood across from Izuku. Here are the rules. Midnight stepped onto her umpire box. In order to win, you must either force your opponent out of bounds, immobilize them, have them give up, or have them unable to continue. If I declare the match is over, then it's over, no back talk. We have recovery girl on standby, so injuries can be taken care of. Now, show us an entertaining match. I will be here to stop any fight if things go too far. Cementus spoke up from his chair, giving both teens a steely gaze. Do not make me restrain you, alright? Yes, sir. Izuku nodded to Cementus. Yes, sir. Kaminari agreed as he got ready for the match. Are you ready? Mick cheered and the crowd roared in response. The excitement in the air was palpable. Begin. Midnight cracked her whip to start the match. Indiscriminate shock. 1.3 million volts. Kaminari was awash in a brilliant shower of electricity as he pushed his Quirk to the max to try and defeat Izuku instantly. He knew he'd lose if Izuku was given time to use his Quirk. Kaminari, come on, we went over this during training. Izuku sighed at the action of his classmate. The second he'd seen Kaminari sparking like that, he'd leapt vertically into the air. His body enhancement Quirk was a mutant type, meaning it was always active. He could make this nearly 15-meter vertical leap fairly easily. He didn't have to tap into his pyrokinesis and bulk up to perform superhuman physical feats like this. Kaminari blinked in shock as his electricity washed over the ring that he now stood alone in. Oh crap, he realized he'd been read too late and felt his cognitive functions dip. Yay, the blonde mumbled as the kickback from his Quirk took its toll. Come on Kaminari, let's get you to recovery girl. Izuku landed back on the ring with a sigh. He placed his left hand on the blonde's back and easily ushered him out of bounds. Kaminari is out of bounds. Midnight declared into her mic. The winner is Izuku Midoriya. The crowd applauded at the short match, while dozens of pro heroes commented on the two teens. He wanted to win in one shot, and it came back to bite him. A female pro hero remarked on the quick match. The hero's costume consisted of a sleeveless navy blue shirt with a high collar that was buttoned up all the way to her chin, puffed shorts with a green and orange pinstripe design, and a corset adorned with yellow smiley face pins, dipping down in a shallow U shape in the center. Below that, she wore a white V-shaped belt, and on her hands, she had padded yellow gloves with golden plates over her knuckles and lower fingers, which extend in orange striped tubes down her forearms, with thick metal cylinders acting as wrist guards over the top. She also wore an orange bandana and a white hygiene mask with a circular smiley face protrusion on either side. The Midoriya kid has some impressive physicality even when he's not bulked up like he was in the obstacle race. A male pro hero noted about Izuku as the Verdette passed Kaminari into the care of the stretcher robots. For his hero costume, he wore a white mask with 4 holes in a square formation, all of which resembled gun muzzles with slight barrel stems protruding from their sides, the only exception, for some reason, being the bottom left one, which instead just has the appearance of a regular circle. He wore a partial bodysuit of a dark grayish cyan color, only covering the lower portion of his torso, his arms from the shoulders down and the palms of his hands. A padded combat vest sat over this, around the sides of his chest, and was kept in place by 2 straps that connect his mask and shoulders. He also sported plain brown pants and short black boots, as well as his signature revolver, chamber-shaped silver bracers and the spikes on his knuckles. Well, that was a bit faster than we thought, Mick mentioned, while Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. We've gone over that multiple times already. Aizawa sighed as he'd have to make sure the lesson to not make yourself a liability stuck the next time they went over it in class. Well, no time like the present, let's move right along into the next match. Mick cheered and started building the crowd back up. For the second match, coming out of the right tunnel, we have the dark horse of General Studies Course Class 1C, Shinso Hitachi. Mick introduced as Shinso made his way into the ring. I won't fail, not this time. Shinso whispered to himself as he waited for his opponent. Coming in from the left tunnel, it's the short grape with the sticky quirk, from Hero Course Class 1A, Mineta Minor. Mick introduced Mineta to the crowd. Mineta waved to the crowd as she made his way to the ring. He knew how Shinso's quirk worked, he felt like he'd gotten a lucky draw for this round. Are you ready for another match? Mick questioned and the crowd cheered loudly for the next match. Begin. Midnight cracked her whip and the match began. Take this. Mineta immediately started tossing his pop-off balls at Shinso. Limited range and your aim sucks. Shinso easily weaved around the projectiles coming at him, and then he was on the move to close the distance. That's why you spam them every time, you're just hoping to hit something. Far be it from Shinso to not talk smack to try and get a rise out of his opponents. If they responded at all to his taunts, then he'd ensnare them with his quirk. Mineta locked his jaw to not retort and continued to toss his pop-off balls at Shinso, while also laying down a field of the purple orbs between him and the taller teen. He wouldn't let Shinso get close. If he covered the entire ring with his pop-off balls, then the brainwashed quirk user wouldn't have anywhere left to escape. You're one-trick pony and you know it. Shinso baited just before he performed an impressive leap and had him land just beside Mineta. The short teen's eyes widened in shock at the distance Shinso had covered in that jump. He whipped his arm around to hit the other perplet with the ball in his hand. Shinso grabbed his wrist and stopped the attempt cold. So strong, Mineta bit out at not being able to move his captured arm. He tried to grab a pop-off ball with his free left hand, but Shinso's knee slamming into his unprotected right side stopped that plan. Mineta felt the sharp pain of the blow radiate out from his side. Got you? Shinso declared as he spun the off-balance Mineta around and grabbed his other arm. He forced the shorter teen's arms behind his back in a textbook police hold. With his arms restrained, Mineta couldn't use his quirk at all. Shinso had observed his 3 teammates in the cavalry battle closely. Mineta's short stature and weaker body meant that he couldn't outmuscle Shinso. Come with me real quick. Shinso hefted Mineta upright and then off the ring floor entirely. Hey. Stop. Mineta tried to struggle, flailing his legs as Shinso held him suspended in the air. One of the general studies student's hands had an iron grip on Mineta's wrists behind the short teen's back. The other was around his waist holding him off the ground. No, I'm getting into the hero course. Shinso denied the struggling Mineta. Had he not put in all the extra time and effort to work on his physicality both before and after the entrance exam, he'd have never been able to manhandle the flailing Mineta like this. With a toss, Shinso had Mineta falling out of bounds, much to the hero course students' dismay. Mineta is out of bounds. Midnight declared for all to hear. The winner is Shinso Hitachi. The roar of the crowd actually brought a small smile to Shinso's face. You're doing it, Shinso. One of his general studies classmates called out to him encouragingly. Keep it up, dude. Show those guys what general studies can do. Another guy yelled down to Shinso from the stands. I don't believe he used his quirk at all. That's interesting. The gray-haired pro hero commented thoughtfully as he watched Shinso leave through the same tunnel he'd emerged from. The hero's costume had the appearance of a traditional ninja. He wore a blue mask that covered his mouth, tied at the back of his head with red string. He had a red shinobi shizoku underneath a blue robe. His arms were covered in a thin, dark cloth that was tucked into his white forearm sleeves. There were red straps attached to both his belt and his blue robe that extend outward. He also had a gold mask attached to his shoulder, and sported a signature red scarf that featured a white patch attached to the front of it. The rather famous hero finished his costume with blue socks and yellow Zori sandals. The longer match this time, and the dark horse has shown quite the aptitude. Mick nearly used his quirk by accident from seeing the match. It wasn't often a general studies student defeated a hero course student in the sports festival like this. How far will Shinso go in this tournament? He took advantage of knowing his opponent's quirk and his opponent's stature. Aizawa commented replaying the match in his head. He's clearly put in effort to not require his quirk to win. That was actually some good commentary, buddy. Mick covered his microphone and gave Aizawa a grin. Why don't you do that more often? Shut up. Aizawa gave Mick a flat stare. The blonde only smirked at his friend in response. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Mick hollered to the crowd. It's time for match 3. Let's hear some noise for our competitors. The crowd cheered and applauded loudly for the next match. From the right tunnel we have the ultimate shield, a real manly dude, Kirishima Jiro. Thanks, teach. Kirishima grinned brightly at everyone as he walked out to the ring. From the left tunnel comes the explosive teen with an attitude, Bakugo Katsuki. Mick introduced as Bakugo walked into the light with a determined look on his face. Are both competitors ready? Midnight questioned both students, looking between the two teens. Oh yeah. Kirishima grinned as he activated his hardening quirk. Bring it on, shitty hair. Bakugo growled as small explosions flashed in his palms. Begin. Midnight cracked her whip and both boys launched themselves at each other. Bakugo opened with a big right swing backed by the power of his explosion quirk. Kirishima used his hardened body and deflected the blow, before driving his fist into Bakugo's stomach. The ash blonde only took a glancing blow as he took a step backwards. He thrust his palm towards Kirishima's face and let loose an even stronger blast. The Redeed stumbled back slightly from the point-blank shot. Got you? Bakugo roared as he placed both palms towards Kirishima and let loose a large explosion. Kirishima flew backwards from the blast and rolled on the floor of the ring for a second. He pushed himself up to his feet and retook his stance, just as Bakugo came roaring in with more explosive strikes. That all you got? Kirishima grinned as he pushed through the attacks and socked Bakugo in the jaw with his hardened fist. Fuck. Bakugo spun and almost went to the ground. He stomped his left foot down to steady himself, even as his jaw radiated pain. A snarl tore its way from the ash blonde's mouth as he blasted Kirishima again, this explosive larger than any of the previous ones. Miss me? Kirishima declared as he came in from the side. He clearly hadn't managed to dodge all of the blast, as shown by the half-destroyed uniform top he was wearing. He bum-rushed Bakugo and tackled him to the floor. Kirishima began to rain down punches onto Bakugo who could only guard against the onslaught. I'm not losing to shitty hair. Bakugo roared in his own head while dealing with the rain of blows. His arms were beaten and bruised from Kirishima's hardened fists, and he knew he couldn't take this beating for long. Die. Bakugo roared as he slammed his palms against the Redeed's torso and unleashed a titanic blast against his classmate. A sharp pain shooting through his arms let Bakugo know that he'd overdone it with his quirk. The deafening blast that had rang out through the stadium and obscured most of the ring from view had shocked most of the spectators. To think a teen had that much force was outright humbling to some. Many were concerned about the condition of his opponent who had taken that blast point blank. When the smoke cleared, everyone saw Bakugo back on his feet and Kirishima climbing back to his own. Kirishima was much closer to out of bounds than he had been before the blast. His uniform top was completely gone now, and he had singe marks covering his exposed skin, but he was standing tall and squaring up for another round. Come on, Bakugo, Kirishima smirked at his classmate. I can do this all day. Like hell. Bakugo shouted as he rushed forward. Kirishima swung at Bakugo, but the ash blonde could tell the Redeed wasn't a peak form anymore. The punch was slower and easier to avoid. He peppered his classmate with smaller explosions, forcing him back, even as each blast made a shock of pain travel up his arms and straight into his brain. After over a dozen of these blasts, they both heard the sharp snap of Midnight's whip. Kirishima is out of bounds. Midnight declared as both teens stopped fighting. Bakugo is the winner. What? Kirishima looked down, panting for breath from the fight, only to notice that his left foot had been forced just over the line by the continuous explosive onslaught. Aw man, he lamented as he let go of his hardening and relaxed. Good match, Bakugo. He held out his hand to the ash blonde. Bakugo scoffed, but he did give Kirishima the equivalent of a low five, as he lightly smacked his hand away. Your tenacity was annoying. Thanks, Kirishima grinned and Bakugo felt a twitch form over his left eye. That wasn't a compliment, shitty hair. Bakugo growled as the two walked off the ring. My name is Kirishima, and my hair isn't that different from yours. Kirishima shot back with a chuckle. Like hell it's not. Bakugo declared as they headed into the tunnel and back towards their class's seating section. What a match. Mick declared as the two teens were walking off the field. A true back and forth if ever there was one. It was a classic match of overwhelming offense versus an unyielding defense. The crowd seemed to agree as a loud applause for the two boys filled the air. After a few minutes for Cementus to fix the damage that Bakugo's massive explosion had done to the ring, the next match was about to get underway. Excitement was high for this match as it included a recommended student. Yorozu Momo had demonstrated some impressive skill in dealing with the foe villain robots in the Robo Inferno, and many were eager to see her in a one-on-one match. From the right tunnel comes the Lady of Creation, a recommended student into UA High's hero course, Yorozu Momo. Mick introduced the Ravenette who walked calmly, at least on the outside, across the field to the ring. "Go yeah Momo." All the girls from One cheered loudly. Momo blushed cutely as she waved to her friends. She was so happy to finally have friends of her own. From the left tunnel comes the dark hero of the night, Tokoyami Fumikage. Mick hollered and Tokoyami walked forth from the shade of the tunnel. He looked ready to go, and a few pros commented on the focus the teen had. He didn't look even mildly perturbed to be up against a recommended student. "Are you both ready?" Midnight looked between Momo and Tokoyami. "Yes ma'am," Momo declared as she rolled up her sleeves. "I am ready." Tokoyami nodded to the teacher as she took his own stance. "Alright, then you may begin," Midnight declared as she cracked her whip to begin the fourth match. "Dark Shadow," Tokoyami called and his quirk responded instantly. The shadow beast rocketed forward towards Momo. Fast. Momo's eyes widened, but she dodged rolled out of the way. A glow along her arms and she pulled a bolo into her right hand. With a quick spin and toss, the capture implement went sailing at Tokoyami. "Clever," Tokoyami noted as he dashed several paces to the side, so that the bolo went wide. "Targeting me instead of dealing with Dark Shadow directly, she's been paying attention to how I use my quirk." While Tokoyami was moving to dodge the bolo, Dark Shadow had swerved back around to attack Momo again. "If you're physical, then take this," Momo declared as she pulled her uniform top upwards to expose her trim stomach. A bright glow was followed by a thick net spreading out to trap the shadow beast. "Hey." Dark Shadow grumbled as the net covered it. "Get off." With strength that made several of the spectators blink in surprise, Dark Shadow tore the net to pieces in seconds. In those brief seconds, Momo had time to create her next item. With a bang, a large cloud of white smoke covered almost half the ring. Tokoyami blinked at the sudden smoke screen before deciding on his next move. He stayed on the move, not wanting to give Momo the advantage of knowing his position. "Dark Shadow, find her and clear the smoke," Tokoyami directed his quirk. "You got it," Dark Shadow called back as it darted in and out of the smoke screen with its large arms wide. The quirk didn't strike Momo, but her smoke screen was being blown away quickly. The clank of metal hitting concrete multiple times was heard as from the waning smoke 3 canisters were tossed. "What?" Tokoyami questioned as his eyes tracked the items bouncing across the ring. It was a natural reaction, but it would prove to be a mistake when the canister went off like bombs, emitting a tremendous flash, along with a deafening and disorientating bang. "My eyes." The raven-headed teen cried out in pain even though he couldn't hear his own words over the ringing of his ears. "Flashbang grenades," Momo explained even though she knew her opponent couldn't hear her. He was mostly blind and deaf at this point. The immense amount of light had also forced Dark Shadow to retreat back into Tokoyami. She threw a length of rope, already tied into a lasso when she made it, over Tokoyami and tightened it. With effort and struggle, since Tokoyami had begun to pull against the rope almost immediately, Momo dragged her opponent to the edge of the ring. Tokoyami's resistance ended up being his undoing as he tried to get to his feet and dig in his heels. The rope suddenly going slack had sent him stumbling forward enough that his foot crossed the line. "Tokoyami is out of bounds," Midnight declared, even with spots in her vision and her ears ringing a bit. "Yorozu is the winner. Thank you for the excellent match, Tokoyami." Momo gave her raven-headed classmate a short bow. She pulled out the earplugs she created inside her own ear canals a moment later. "What?" Tokoyami wasn't able to read lips with his vision still spotty. His ringing ears couldn't make out what Momo was saying either. "My apologies," Momo bowed again, fretting slightly that she may have gone overboard with her creations. "Let's head to Recovery Girl's office to treat you." "Ha." Tokoyami almost made out what his classmate had said that time. He was fairly certain she'd mentioned Recovery Girl. Healing would be appreciated. He followed Momo as his vision finally began to clear up. "That was a blinding match, sports fans," Mick called out over the speakers. A surprise round of flashbangs all but ended the match, along with some spectators' eyesight and hearing. "She most likely played a hunch," Aizawa spoke up. With a quirk like Tokoyami's that can act independently, she had to find a way to try and neutralize both targets simultaneously. Disabling Tokoyami made his control over his quirk falter long enough for Yorozu to achieve victory over her disorientated opponent. "That's smart thinking." Mick praised Momo even though she was no longer on the field. Just what one would expect from a recommendation student, right? The cheer that rose up from the spectators was all the answer anyone needed. "Yeah, Momo did awesome." Toga cheered along with the other girls of Class 1A. "So Tokoyami needs to be in mostly full cognitive and sensory function to fully utilize his quirk." Izuku was writing like mad in his notebook. Every few seconds he was flipping back and forth between Momo's page and Tokoyami's page to fill in various thoughts and speculations about his classmates. "I think we've lost Midoriya," Jiro spoke up with a raised eyebrow, watching one of the powerhouses of their class mutter up a storm. "Toga-chan isn't worried, so I'm sure he's fine." Toru laughed as even when people were talking about him, Izuku seemed to not notice. It's time for match 5, everyone. Mick's voice blared across the stadium. This time we have another dark horse competitor. From the left tunnel, a student from support course class 1H, it's Mei Hatsume. Watch me and my amazing babies at work, all of you support companies. Mei smiled widely as she walked towards the ring fully decked out in her various gear. From the right tunnel, it's the high-speed hero in training, Iida Tenya. Mick introduced as Iida walked towards the ring while wearing support gear that no one in class 1 had ever seen before. What the heck is Iida wearing? Mina blinked at the items. I've never seen Iida wear any gear beyond his costume before. Ichako shook her head as they saw Iida enter the ring. What's this gear, Iida? Midnight had stepped down from her umpire stand to inquire about the items. Such things should have been submitted for acceptance ahead of time. It wasn't like the ever-earnest Iida to not follow proper protocol. I'm terribly sorry for not going through the proper procedures, Iida apologized to Midnight. I was touched by my opponent's sense of sportsmanship. Mei grinned, though it was mischievous in nature that she tried to hide. Although she is a member of support course, she came to me and said if we are to be seen as equals, then we should fight on equal footing, and then gave me these items to use. Her earnest spirit, I could never look down on it. That was my thinking. You're adorably naive, Midnight held back a giggle. If both parties are in agreement, then it should be fine. Aizawa's voice came over the speakers. His tone was so dull and factual that no one even wanted to argue the matter. Is Hatsume really the type to offer her stuff freely? Izuku didn't look convinced, having been her teammate in the cavalry battle. I'm 100% certain that she's up to something. Toga stated from beside him, her own features flat and unbelieving. They were both absolutely correct. From the very second that Midnight started the match, Mei had started up a literal support gear presentation with Iida as her test dummy. All the gear Iida was wearing was presented as if they were at an expo. Every counter Mei made was followed by her describing her baby in loving detail, and how it could be used in the field. On and on it went, with item after item being put on display. Mei could have even won the match had she taken advantage on multiple occasions. But at the end of what amounted to a 10-minute exposition showing, Mei casually stepped out of bounds with a smile. Phew, Mei wiped her face of sweat. I believe they've seen it all now. The manic pink-haired inventor looked very pleased with her showing. Hatsume is out of the ring. Iida moves on to the next round. Midnight's announcement was met with silence as the whole crowd, the teachers included, just stared flatly at the pin cat. You deceived me. Iida cried out as he witnessed Mei just give up on the match entirely. He was almost hunched over in disbelief as he stared at her in shock. Sorry for using you like that, Mei apologized, but she was still lightly chuckling under her breath at how well her plan had worked. I really dislike you, Iida declared as he pointed at her with his arm fully extended. The teen was shaking in a mixture of embarrassment and rage. Iida is just so straightforward. Izuku shook his head at what they'd all just witnessed. It was easy for Mei to get him to play her game. I mean, at least she's honest about her underhanded methods to get what she wants. Toga gave a half-hearted shrug, since she was still processing what she'd watched. It wasn't long afterwards that Mina and Aoyama were being announced to the crowd. The excitement was building back up again after Mei's exhibition of all of her babies. The murmurs of the crowd were growing louder as both Mina and Aoyama had only briefly shown what they could do in the festival so far. From the right tunnel, it's the energetic acid girl of Class 1A, Ashido Mina. Mick announced as Mina walked out onto the field with a bright smile for the crowd. The pin cat happily waved as she made her way to the ring. Oh Mina. Toga and Toru cheered for their friend loudly. This should be interesting. Izuku already had his notebook at the ready to jot down any new observations. From the left tunnel, we have the shining laser user, Aoyama Yuga. Mick introduced, and the blonde teen made his way to the ring with smiles and poses for the cameras. Never let it be said that Aoyama wasn't a consummate showman. Alright, are both competitors ready? Midnight asked the two teens as they stood across from one another. Yep. Mina was bright and cheery, ready to fight and win. Of course, Aoyama agreed with a smile. Then you may begin. Midnight started the match as always with a sharp crack of her whip. This will be over in a flash, Aoyama declared as he blasted his laser at Mina. Whoa. Mina dashed to the side to avoid the beam. You can't run forever, mademoiselle. Aoyama grinned as he fired at Mina's running form. Hey. Mina stopped dead to avoid running into the beam. Watch it. Mina leapt over the third beam entirely. You're annoying. She huffed as she had to limbo under the fourth blast. I aim to win. Aoyama fired another blast even as his stomach started to hurt. In your dreams, Mina declared as she started to secrete her acid from her special shoes and skate around the ring. Her increased speed made hitting her even harder for Aoyama. That's some fancy skating. Mick approved of the non-conventional use of Mina's quirk. Thinking outside the box is necessary for any hero, Aizawa commented as he watched his students compete against each other. If one tactic doesn't work, then switch to another. A hero can't be a one-trick pony. Your quirk doesn't work without your belt, right? Mina had a gleam in her eyes as she filled her palms with her acid. Take this. She whipped her hands forward and sent a spray of her quirk at Aoyama. Surely you jest. Aoyama shot back as he fired his laser, and the acid disappeared in the beam. I know to protect my equipment. You want a war of attrition, huh? Mina smirked at her classmate. She knew he couldn't fire his laser for more than a second or two at a time without hurting himself. She skated around some more as Aoyama was slowly running out of resilience as the pain in his gut built up. Try this on for size. I'm laying down an acid field. What? Aoyama gazed around and saw that Mina had indeed covered most of the ring floor with acid. The small sizzling sound he'd blocked out while trying to take Mina down now filled his ears. His moment of distraction cost him. Got you? Mina hurled a glob of acid at Aoyama and struck the belt he used to focus and control his quirk. She missed her intended target of the large lens in the center, but the belt strap melted away and the gear dropped to the ring floor. Ah! Aoyama was quick to grab his pants as they fell slightly from the loss of his belt. Everyone got a brief glimpse of his tidy whities though. Well, I didn't need to see that. Mina skated forward and got into the panicking Aoyama's guard. Uppercut. She called out as she socked the blonde in the jaw with a near-perfect uppercut. Aoyama's head rocked backwards, and his feet almost left the ground before he fell back and hit the floor. I concede, Aoyama slurred out slightly as his vision swam, and he couldn't use his quirk without his belt. Aoyama has surrendered. Midnight announced with her hand raised. The winner is Ashido Mina. Eh? Mina smiled brightly and gave victory signs to the crowd with both hands. She was on a high, and her bubbly personality was coming to the forefront. Woohoo! You're awesome, Mina. The girls of Class 1 happily applauded and cheered for their friend as the Pincat walked off the field. Aoyama was being carted off to deal with his loss of balance, and to keep his pants from falling down. Recovery Girl would see him right as rain in short order. Isn't the next match? Sero trailed off as everyone realized that Todoroki and Sero were about to face off. Yet Kaminari also didn't want to count Sero out, but Todoroki was easily one of the most powerful of their class. Sero might have a chance if he can catch Todoroki off guard with a surprise attack the instant the match starts. Izuku murmured as he thought over his two classmates. True, Momo agreed with the verdette. Sero doesn't have to beat Todoroki, just make him take even a step out of bounds, and he wins. But will Todoroki give him such a chance? Tsuyu didn't look like she believed the dual-tone team would. Now we have the second to last match of the first round of the one-on-one tournament. From the left tunnel we have a future capture hero with a focus on mobility. Sero Hanta of the hero course. Mick introduced Sero with flair. Yeah, that sounds right up my alley. Sero grinned as he stretched while walking up to the ring. From the right tunnel we have another recommendation student. He's a powerhouse and one of the top students in his class, Todoroki Shoto. Mick declared and the crowd worked up even more energy. Dude, you alright? Sero blinked when he saw the downright angry look on Todoroki's face. Something was definitely up with his classmate. Are you both ready? Midnight asked of the boys. Yes. Shoto's one-word reply was filled with a cold rage. I guess. Sero prepared his quirk for action. Then begin. Midnight cracked her whip to start the match. I don't feel like losing. Sero launched two thick strands of tape, one from each elbow, at Todoroki. In a flash they bound the ice and fire user's legs together and his arms to his torso. With a powerful twist of his body, Sero sent Todoroki towards the edge of the ring. Sero goes for the instant ring out. Mick announced as the entire audience watched on in shock as Todoroki got closer and closer to the edge. Sorry about this, Todoroki exhaled frosted breath. In an instant, literally the blink of an eye, a glacier appeared in the stadium. Everyone stared in silent shock at the mass of ice that Todoroki had formed. It was slanted upwards, poking far out of the stadium for anyone walking by to see. Almost 20% of the audience got an up-close and personal view of the glacier as it hung over their seats. Down in the ring, everything was frozen from where Todoroki stood and spreading outwards. Sero had been swept off his feet and now was suspended in the ice almost 2 meters off the ground. Midnight has a layer of frost covering half her body. Cementus was brushing ice off his cubic body with a flat look on his face. Todoroki seemed to snap out of his anger and exhaled heavily at his overreaction. Truly his father could bring out the worst in him. That seemed like overkill. Sero chattered his teeth as he was encased in the ice up to his neck. Sero, can you move? The half-frozen Midnight questioned. You kidding, right? Sero shivered fiercely in his icy prison. Sero is immobilized. Todoroki is the winner. Midnight pointed in Todoroki's direction. But try, kid. One hero called out to Sero. This was followed by a small chorus of the same words from other heroes. What's wrong with that kid? One of the pros questioned. Had he unleashed an attack like that in the field, he'd have taken out the villain and everything else around him. He definitely didn't show any forethought with his quirk. Another hero shook her head. That's how you cause collateral damage and injure innocent bystanders. He definitely needs some self-control. A different hero nodded. Sorry, I overdid it. Todoroki apologized to Sero as he placed his left hand onto the ice, and it began to rapidly melt. I was just really annoyed about something. Hey kid, stop melting, the top is gonna fall. Several members of the crowd screamed at Todoroki as the iceberg he created began to tilt and inch towards the stands as its face support liquefied. Todoroki didn't even get the chance to reply before an immense heat filled the stadium. It blasted away the cold of the ice, and the entire glacier began to melt into water that evaporated near instantly. Izuku was standing on top of the Class 1 spectator booth with his hand on the mass of ice. He was built up and blazing with heat and flame, as he made Todoroki's ice vanish in mere seconds. The large team was almost like a miniature sun. You need to be more careful, Todoroki. Izuku locked eyes with the other team. Sorry, Todoroki gave a full bow to the area of the stadium that was almost harmed by his attack. My deepest apologies, everyone. Shoto, a man in a navy blue hero costume with flames seemingly filling it and radiating off of it, grumbled. His boots were emitting steam as he cooled down from almost leaping into action to melt the glacier himself. This was the flame hero. Endeavor, also known as Todoroki Enji. He was Todoroki Shoto's father. When are you going to stop this meaningless rebellion against me? How many people have to be hurt before you'll admit that you need your left side? Unbeknownst to Izuku, the number 2 hero's eyes also drifted over to him as well. It wasn't every day that Endeavor met another fire quirk user that could potentially match his own output. This Midoriya boy bore watching, he might be worth something. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.